Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Experimental Cataclysm, the show where we talk about recent changes to the experimental version of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. First up today, I need to mention a video from Korg. He is one of the game's devs, if you're not familiar with him. He posted a video which was a collaborative effort between he and Erk, who is another game dev for Cataclysm. In the video, they talk about some of their plans for the wound system, which should be coming to the game in the future. I have yet to watch this video fully. I've watched parts of it. Yes, I know I'm a content creator for the game. I probably should have watched it by now. And I did watch a bunch of it. I just have not fully watched the video yet. They are devs, of course, two technically minded individuals, so they talk in terms of like coding and very technical things throughout the video. I'm a big fan of devs interfacing with the community, really in any capacity. Most of the devs for this game keep to the dev Discord or GitHub. It's not often that you see video content. And no, I'm not going to summarize the things that they talked about. First of all, I want you to watch the video so it gets more views, and this will then show the dev team that we would like more direct contact from them in the future. And two, at this point, these are theoretical things. These are plans for the future. None of them have actually made it to the game yet. We, of course, will talk about things in the show once they get PR'd and are merged into the core game, which will probably not be anytime soon. We are in feature freeze after all, and these things would be very large changes to the game. Also, you know, devs are busy people and etc. So yeah, it looks like the video has done pretty well in terms of views, and if you have not watched it, I would highly recommend you check it out, assuming that you don't mind like really technical talk, and there will of course be a link in the description down below. Next up, I wanted to offer an update on something that we talked about in the last show. Now unfortunately it was something spoilery, so I'm going to be pretty vague here. It was that whole thing, you remember, about being ejected from a very spoilery location and being instantly murdered. Well, Ramza has addressed those issues. As far as I know, they have all been fixed, so you can now safely explore in air quotes because it's still, the apocalypse and whatnot. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then shame on you for not watching your quota of my videos, or respect for not wanting spoilers and you want to discover things for yourself. I totally get that. That's totally fine. Moving along though, I suppose we should get into the actual changes that have happened over the last couple of weeks. First up today from Lurching Otter, we've got the addition of Cluttered Houses, referred to in the PR as Hoarder Houses. They do mention in the PR that this might not be the right term to use and that there are mental health issues attached to the word hoarder, things like that. So look, I'm not trying to offend anyone. In fact, I grew up in what I would personally call a hoarder house with piles of stuff that was larger than I was. I never really knew anything about actual disorders or anything like that when I was growing up, and I still really don't, I guess. But yeah, I'm not trying to offend anyone. Anyway, this PR added 6 layouts for houses that include a ton of furniture and item clutter. Now 6 might sound like a lot, but we actually have so many variants for houses, so that might sound like a lot, but it's actually just a very small number. We also set a weight for each variant of map gen, so based on these numbers, these cluttered houses should have something like a 1% chance to spawn, and yeah, these will be appropriately rare. In the PR, they mention that hoarding is suspected to be something like 5% of the population. However, many of those people would experience more mild symptoms and probably not have a full-on cluttered house full of stuff. The houses are filled with a lot of random items, mostly things that will not be of value. There's a lot of furniture, there's a lot of boxes throughout the building. Most of the items are trash. They're dishware, plates, blankets, other random household items, things like that. Now I did see that some tools can appear here, things that you would normally find in the bathroom like a plunger, and there are also things that would normally appear in your in the junk drawers in kitchens of different houses. So it is possible that you might find some duct tape or a hammer, things like that. Overall though, you probably will not be sifting through this location when all you're going to find really are very basic things that you would find in most houses. That's not really the point of the PR though. It's not meant to be a loot pinata. It's meant to be a unique location that represents a non-0% of the population. Anyway, yeah, it's one of those simple changes that further fleshes out the world, and I personally like seeing those things come to the game. Continuing the theme of food talk, let's talk about recent changes to pet food from Sathra. Apparently at some point wild veggies were removed from the foraging lists. I didn't notice this when it happened, but I guess that it did, and as such, according to this PR, it became very difficult to make cattle fodder and dog food specifically. Apparently the only other viable ingredients came from triffids or fungus, things like that were a little bit more rare, and I personally still remember when wet dog food was literally just water and meat. I'm not sure why it even requires a veggie component in the first place. I know that dogs do eat vegetables and most dry dog food is made from vegetables, but I see no reason why this can't just be chopped meat in water. The goal here is just to make a separate item in the game that you can then use to feed a dog and tame it, so it's not something that should need a vegetable component. I don't really understand that. But anyway, that's not really the point here. Now, instead of using hand-selected ingredients like the Triffid stuff that I just talked about, these recipes were converted to use the veggie green list. This means that anything on that list can now be used to make dog food, for instance, so you will see that there's a big list of possible vegetables. Actually, and I hate when I do this, and you probably hate when I do this as well, but actually as I was looking over these dog food recipes, they seem really silly and nonsensical. 3 out of the 4 appear to be canning recipes and require both canning pots, and one of them requires scrap metal and metal sawing. What are you sawing to make dog food? Am I sawing a single lid for this can? It's such a bizarre thing. What is the point of that? Additionally, only one of them requires proficiencies, which is knife skills, despite the fact that all 4 recipes require you to cut the meat. Why would they not all have that requirement? And all 4 of them require you to cook the meat. I don't understand that either. It's dog food. It can just be cheap, uncooked meat. So not only is it silly that we don't have the ability to just throw some raw meat together to feed a dog, but it also requires a vegetable component, it has inconsistent proficiencies, and one of them requires metal sawing for no obvious reason. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. That always happens in these shows. I find something unrelated to the PR in question that is confusing, and then I end up talking about it here. Coming back to the PR, this also added the ability to take roasted chestnuts and convert them into flour. It also rebalanced the conversion rate for acorns into non-wheat flour. Mostly I don't understand the dog food recipes at all. We don't track animal nutrition or anything like that. It's literally just used for taming a dog. Some of these they're just unnecessarily complicated and borderline are ridiculous. What was wrong with mushing water and raw meat together and then using that to tame a dog? It's a dog. It's not going to turn its nose up and say, "Oh, sorry, survivor, this was no medium well and you didn't add my side dish of vegetation." We should move on though, I can feel myself spiraling. Next up today from Night, we've got an additional restriction for when you try to climb difficult stairs. Now I realize that you can't see me making air quotes when I say the word stairs, but basically I mean things that act as a Z-level transition but are marked as difficult, such as ladders or downspouts. Previously we had the restriction where you can no longer climb such things if both of your arms are broken. And this PR takes it even further by saying that if you're wielding an item that requires both of your hands, you cannot climb and you will receive a prompt about discarding the item in your hands. You can then store the item or drop the item and climb up, or obviously you can cancel the climbing action. This is a really simple and straightforward PR, but it obviously tracks with realism and depending on your playstyle may actually be kind of a noteworthy hindrance, so I figured I would mention it. You're going to start seeing this pop up as you play, and this is especially true for people who use large two-handed melee weapons. Next up, also from Night, we've got the ability to turn distractions off. Now we've all seen this. You've been playing the game and you're getting constantly interrupted by something and it's deeply obnoxious. Maybe there's a location nearby with gunfire or a robot complaining or whatever, and it continually gives you pop-ups as you're crafting or reading a book or whatever you're doing. Now this is truly obnoxious and we pretty regularly get people asking about how to disable those pop-ups. You have never been able to up until now, but obviously that's what this PR does. It adds the ability to turn them off. Now you will open the in-game menu. I do this by hitting escape. I don't know if there are other options for that keybind. Then you will select the distraction manager and you will be able to turn off a variety of different interrupts. You do this by selecting the one you want and hitting enter. That's really all there is to it. You can re-enable or disable these at any time. There's no restrictions on that. You don't have to go to the main menu or anything like that. You can very easily do this from within the game, and I have some conflicting feelings about this. Firstly, like I said, these can be extremely annoying. Maybe you take a lungful of smoke while you're trying to read and you keep getting pop-ups about, oh, your chest hurts or whatever. Most of the time there's no chance that that thing could possibly kill me, so why should I get continual warnings about it? So I think for experienced players who use this intelligently, there's really no issue here at all. I think it's all upside. However, I'm concerned that new players will be annoyed by these when they first start playing and they will turn them all off, which will lead to them being killed. Now on the one hand, this would be entirely their own fault, but they will inevitably be angry about it. But on the other hand, I usually try to think of things from a new player perspective, and I remember disabling things when I first started playing. Back when I first started playing the game, I was very annoyed by safe mode. So when I would play, I would disable safe mode at all times. And this 100% led to me dying way more than I should have. Although, to be fair, back then there were a lot fewer interrupts. So if you didn't have safe mode on, you could just get obliterated without a prompt to stop whatever you were doing. Nowadays, if you get hurt, it'll give a pop-up. If you spot an enemy, it gives a pop-up. It didn't used to do that. But anyway, that's what I thought of when I saw this. And I know that things like this are not a consideration when it comes to adding a new feature to the game. So I'm mostly pro this change, but I am not looking forward to the huge number of people that are going to get themselves murdered because they forgot they turned something off. There's nothing we can do about that, and of course that's not something that should stop this PR from being merged. I just sort of bums me out to think about all the people who are going to die as a result of this. That's all I've got for this change, though. I do like this personally as an experienced player, so I suspect that most of you will as well. Next up today from Actually a Cat, we've got a pseudo rebalance to Mutation Chances. Now I say pseudo for a reason. It is actually a rebalance, but it's a rebalance to what it was supposed to be in the first place. So I covered the mutation changes a while back. Miley had made many changes to how the system worked, and it was largely more favorable for the average player. We talked about how instability worked and how that affected your likelihood of getting good, bad, or neutral mutations. Now I will try to remember to link to that original mutation video in the description down below if you have not seen it. So anyway, this system was supposed to be pretty favorable for the player and lead to more good mutations early on, gradually leading to bad mutations as you changed your body more and more. However, it was not working as it was depicted in that PR. This meant that in the game you were actually much more likely to get bad mutations than you were supposed to be, and you would get these mutations a lot earlier on the instability chart. If you're interested, you can look at the PR directly, but fair warning, it contains my nemesis, which would be math and formulae. Is it formulae, by the way? I have always said formulae, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be formulae. I don't know. I was never took college level math. It doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, this should lead to you having better chances for good mutations than you had a couple weeks ago, and getting bad mutations should be delayed a little while longer. Next up today from Frizz, we've got a change that makes a good night's sleep healthy. Now we talked about the rework of the health system probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, and one of the things that we talked about was that sleep deprivation would harm your health. The gist of things is that we're moving away from health as a mostly food-oriented system that was completely broken to being more about living well and making good choices. Part of this includes getting a good night's sleep in order to buff your health modifier, leading to an increase in health over time. Now bear with me here, this PR reads a lot like a logic problem, and I'm pretty stupid, so I'll do my best here. To my understanding, if you sleep for more than 6 hours, you get a buff to your health. Every day you can gain a maximum of +10 to your daily health. I think that also, even if you sleep less than 6 hours, you still receive a health bonus. It's just not as much, but I'm not 100% on that. And I do really want to be clear here. I had a hard time reading this, and it may not be exactly right. I just know that sleeping is good and getting more than 6 hours buffs your health. Additionally, this is referred to as effective time slept in the PR, and it mentions that this takes into account mutation, pain, things like that, hibernation. But I just genuinely don't really know what that means. I assume what that means is, like, for example, if you're in pain, the sleep that you get won't be effective, and so it will not count towards the 6-hour requirement. But I just don't know that for sure. Although also when we play the game, we do shed pain pretty quickly while we're sleeping, so I'm not even sure how much of an impact that would actually have, assuming that you sleep like 8 or 10 hours like my characters usually do in the game. So sorry I couldn't give more information on that. I just fundamentally don't understand it. There were a lot of changes like that this week where I'm reading the PR and I'm starting to think, like, are you getting dumber as you get older because you're not understanding the things that they're saying? Although I'm having some personal problems, which we might talk about at the end of the show. So, and then finally today, just move on. And then finally today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about sidebars. Now I mentioned some sidebar stuff in the last episode, but I don't think it was very clear in what I was saying, and there has also been an update. So it seemed like people were confused when I talked about having a way to edit the sidebar features in the game. What I meant was basically I wanted a way way to toggle these features on and off from inside of the game rather than requiring you to edit the JSON file listed in your sidebar. So for example, one of the things that we have now is the ability to display numbers or percentages, things like that, in lieu of the 5 bars of health that we normally have. So I would love a way in the game to simply toggle my display from showing numbers or percentages or the old 5-bar system. And when I say 5-bar, I mean like how your health bars are 5 bars or the health of an item is comprised of bars, things like that. But anyway, after saying all of that and phrasing my thoughts pretty poorly, I talked to some folks on Discord about this. And one of the things that they mentioned was that even though many of the tweaks could only be done if you affected change inside of the JSON file, it was possible for people to make their own sidebar layouts that could then be added to the game. And once we had those sidebar layouts, we could actually edit them in the sidebar menu, which is the closing curly brace that we showed in the last episode. This would allow those new features to show up inside of the game, and they could be selected by players who can't edit their files. Now this isn't full control over the sidebar like you would have if you edited the file yourself, but it was still something. And this week when I updated, I saw that there were in fact several new sidebar layouts that you can select from in the game. There was also a PR that added a display for showing your exact hit point information like the old self-aware trait used to do. Now I won't cover all of this in super detail, you would probably want to further customize them yourself anyway. The two that I noticed that were brand new were the spacebar and structured sidebar layouts. There may be others, I think there are others, I just am not super sure which were new and which came a while back. Like I know we got the thick sidebar like a month or two ago. I've always personally used the classic sidebar, although I do think I'm going to be changing in the nearish future now that I've seen some of these new layouts. So the thing about the spacebar layout is that it has unique separator lines, and they remind me a lot of like the early days of the internet, like when I was young and people would just spam ASCII art and things like that in chat rooms. It also uses circles to display information rather than the old style bars. I sort of like this, especially for showing my stamina. I'm used to the classic sidebar where stamina is displayed using 5 lines like, most everything else. However, in the spacebar layout, it's made up of a couple dozen circles instead. Since there's more of them, it can display more accurate information on how much stamina is being used per attack or as you sprint, etc, etc. And I really like that. I think that's probably my favorite part of that layout. And the other layout I noticed was called structured. There's not a whole lot to say about this one. I do like it because it's slightly wider than the classic sidebar, but it's not omega thick as the thick sidebar is. However, this sidebar has one thing that no other sidebar has, and that would be a tiny version of the health map. My main complaint about the body map is that it has always been just too dang big. In this sidebar layout, it's actually very small, and I actually really like this. I've never had a problem with the body map existing, it's a neat feature. My problem has always been that it just takes up way too much space in the sidebar. Also, I think the little body map is just plain adorable. Now as such, I think I will be switching to this sidebar layout in the future, assuming I don't put together my own custom sidebar from scratch, although I don't know if I'm actually going to follow through on that or not. Anyway, that's really all I had to say about the sidebars. And with that, I think we're about ready to end the show. This video took me quite a long time to put together, even though it's very short. To be honest, internet, I have been struggling a lot. I'm suffering from pretty severe depression and paranoia and feelings of rejection, and I've been having auditory hallucinations, which to most people is probably a huge overshare, but I've been in therapy for like a really long time, so I'm pretty used to just being very honest and talking very openly about these things. These are things that I've experienced before, but it had been a long time since they were significant enough to derail my life to the degree that they have in the last couple of weeks. You may have heard me talk in other content. A few years ago, I got an MRI because we thought like I might have a tumor basically that was making me hear things. I did manage to put this video together. Obviously, if you're hearing me talk, I've been very focused on trying to take care of myself in real life, which has meant that I have not been doing very much for YouTube. I do have some videos for Telltale's The Walking Dead I could release. I put some of that together like 3 or 4 months ago and have never posted them. I also have I think 3 videos, tutorial videos for Cataclysm that are kind of partially done, like a follow-up tutorial for breaking and entering. I have an in-progress melee weapons tutorial, and I have one about just like basic combat tactics for new players. So hopefully I can get some work done and follow through on that. But yeah, sorry, I'm trying to say that things will probably be slow again. I'm trying my best to focus and get work done, but it has been very difficult, and I'm often having therapy and whatnot that is taking up my time. Well, that, and I'm on sedatives, if I'm being honest, which makes it just is super hard to have a coherent thought. But anyway, sorry, I know that's very heavy and depressing, and I know, honestly, usually when I say things like this, I get a huge number of comments who are like, hey, just shut up and make content, which is just super not helpful. I always feel guilty when I don't meet my own expectations for producing content, and then I often get comments asking me, oh, why aren't you posting? Or, oh, do you hate Cataclysm now? And that's the answer, because I'm not doing very well. That's why there's not more content. So right, that's it for the show, though. I should be back in a couple of weeks with another video at the very least. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.